I'm really grateful to be here. I will be honest, I had to throw away my speech after Tuesday election. I am the Early Childhood Subcommittee Chair for the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence, and I'm very proud of the work that we did. We were able to get federal policy change to allow for dual language. And I'm really proud of that. I'm really hoping that it sticks afterwards. But what I decided to do today was to talk about what was the journey that took me to make sure that when I got appointed on the White House Commission, that became our signature point. How was it? And so I wanted to take you on my journey. But also, just a little bit, right now I was on the board of the Girl Scouts for 8 years, and I had the opportunity recently in June to become the interim CEO of the Girl Scouts. And I have not forgotten about the importance of early childhood. One of the first things that happened was the talent executive came to me and said, Sylvia, it's 6 weeks of maternity leave. We want to make it 8 weeks of maternity leave, and we need your signature to extend it. And New York, and Girl Scouts of the USA is in New York, and she said, the state is, I think it's going to move to 8 weeks. We need to do this. And I said, no. And she was crestfallen. She said, Sylvia, this is why we do it. I said, no. I'm saying no because it's not enough. And I'm very proud that we were able to get not 6 weeks, but not 8 weeks, but 12 weeks, not just for moms, but for dads too. So I honestly wanted 6 months because I know how important those years, those every moment counts. But given that, we're still the leading nonprofit now in parental leave, and we're one of the leading organizations nationally. So I'm really excited about that. Also, if you're watching the Macy's Day Parade, I get to march in it this year. So as you're going to, but like I said, on the flight over, I rewrote my speech. I just, after a good cry in the bathroom, I came back and I just started writing. And I realized I want to give you my perspective. What took me from being a rocket scientist, an engineer, technology executive, to this path of where we are and the importance of dual language and why so passionate about both dual language and early childhood. Then I want to talk to you about human capital and the dual language opportunity. It is a massive opportunity, and unfortunately, our underserved population and those in blue-collar work are being left behind. They're losing 2 important competitive advantages in the global economy, and I want to talk about that. And finally, kind of like what Delane said, there is a large pile of manure, but there is a massive pony. And for California, it is a massive competitive advantage that will keep it on the forefront if we can embrace and further embrace the importance of dual language and make sure that it gets to throughout every community in California. And then I'll conclude with some Q&A. And when I started my career, yes, as an engineer, and one of the cool things about being a Girl Scout CEO is you get a patch. And I have patches, so if you want one, come up. But in my patch, it's got stars, and they're all very meaningful, and this is not a cookie. I know most people look at that and go, oh, it's a cookie. No, it's not a cookie. It's the Jupiter, which you mentioned, because I did work on the Jupiter mission. But when I think about this patch, it's because it allowed me a lot of opportunities. Girl Scouting allowed me a lot of opportunities to become a rocket scientist and a scientist. But not only Girl Scouts, but Head Start. I'm really proud to be a Head Start alum. I was in the first class of Head Start, so you already know how old I am. And because of that fundamental great start that I got in Head Start, where my Head Start teacher, she realized that I was horrible at show and tell. And she, like those great educators, saw that this kid couldn't draw, didn't like to draw, didn't like to do things with clay. But instead of forcing me to do that, she took the time and she looked and she saw that I liked books. And even though I came from predominantly a monolingual home, which we spoke Spanish, she encouraged me to get books, and she encouraged me to read them, and my part of show and tell was to talk about the books. And so she'd say, tell the story. And she said, tell the story to your mom. Have your mom ask questions. So little did she know, starting that at Head Start is what got me on this stage today. That very great Head Start teacher. And because she taught me, what does the story say in English and Spanish, that helped me to retain my Spanish-speaking skills and my English skills throughout my career. Now, when I worked after working as a rocket scientist, I went and worked in technology, and because technology was exploding all over the world, they suddenly had a need for engineers that spoke another language. So I had opportunities to become a global executive, yes, because I had a Stanford engineering degree, yes, because I had the technical expertise, but most importantly, porque podía hablar español, because I could speak Spanish. And because of that, I got opportunities to be the first Latina to head up large parts of organizations. But when I was out there in the global economy, I saw something. And again, this was, you know how old I was because I was in the first class of Head Start. But I saw something, and I saw countries like India say, there's going to be this thing called Y2K, the change in the year 2000. And they said that, in India, they said, you know what, we don't have oil, we don't have a lot of manufacturing, but that is our opportunity. Y2K, when millions of code need to be written, and to rewrite all those millions of codes requires a lot of people. And so some very far-sighted people in India said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make sure we have the potential, we have the academic training, and guess what? We speak English. And so they took dead aim and said, we're going to create a technology pipeline to the future for our country. This is back in the day when India wasn't even thought of as any type of competitive threat. Well, they did that first by rewriting those millions of lines of code. And once they wrote those millions of lines of code, they had come into every major corporation, not just in the United States, but in the world. Then what did they go after? All of you who have called customer service know what they did. They took after all of our call centers. And after the call centers, what did they do? Accounting, legal, X-ray. Why? Because they knew, what do you need to succeed in the global economy? Yes, you need the technical skills, but you also need the language skills. And they created that pipeline. Well, what I got to see when I was that global executive is other countries took note. And so it stopped just being India, it became China, it became Pakistan, and a lot of other countries took note. What do we need to do? We need to make sure that our elite workforce is trained in the technical skills, but they also do this other thing. We also speak English. And so when you saw that they had a competitive advantage, and they seized the opportunity. So when I look at that, I saw that, they saw that with the click of a button, with the answer of a phone, they began taking and siphoning jobs away from America. And think about the opportunity. You have a country of 1 billion people. That's India. You have a country of China, 1 billion people. Again, I'm an engineer. I like numbers, so there won't be too many. But let's just do the math. If you have 1 billion people, 10% of that, 10% is 10 million people. If you just look at India's middle class, that's 300 million people. It's huge. A third of that is young, so it's 100 million. Just look at the 100, and that's just their middle class, it's not everybody. If you look at their elite of that 100 million, let's just say their top 10%, that's 10 million people. Now in the US, we have a youth population roughly around 75 million. Our top 10% are 7.5 million. So suddenly now we're competing in an economy against India. Of their top 10%, that's 10 million. Add China, that's another 10 million. Add Pakistan, add Brazil, just the elite of the elite, not everyone. We're competing against the top 25 million. And our top 10% is 7.5 million. So when you can see that all of a sudden, and they're all fluent in English. Now if you go to their top 20%, maybe their English isn't as fluent. But now you're talking 50 million people that now our workforce is competing against. And so when you can see, my goodness, those countries created a pipeline to the future. Now, if you think about in the United States, they created the human capital equation. They created human capital. And what did you need to compete in human capital in the global economy? You need the potential, right? Well, we all have the potential. But they made sure they had the hard skills. Some of that's technology, some of it's kind of specific programming, but they also made sure that they spoke fluent English. So think about that here in the United States. In our underserved populations, or a lot in the blue-collar populations, they lost 2 competitive advantages. One, competitive advantage of geographic proximity. Think about that. For a long time, if you live close to a manufacturing plant, or if you live close to an industry, you could get a job. Now, a lot of those jobs can be done quicker, more efficiently, and at a less cost at the click of a button. In addition, a lot of our underserved and blue-collar workforce, what did they lose? They lost another competitive advantage, and that is the ability to compete only with an elite language of English. English has now become a global standard around the world. So when something gets standardized, it's no longer a competitive advantage. And so suddenly a lot of our folks in the United States, two things that they could count on in their life, their geographic proximity here in the US, and then being able to compete because they spoke fluent English. Now, they're not competing against 1 million, they're not competing against 10 millions, they're competing against tens of millions of people who have been trained, their countries make sure they're trained at the elite level, and yeah, they speak English. So I can understand for a lot of people how frustrating it can be. And here's the other challenge. If you just speak English, you can only compete in English-speaking markets. What we have done to those other countries is we have allowed them a competitive advantage. Why? Because we can't take it to them. We can't go compete in their markets because service and sales is always done in the local language. Service and sales is always done in the local language. So if you want to go get business in China, yeah, you can talk the business level, but you want to serve and sell, you've got to speak in the local language. So I was not surprised when somebody here was saying that their daughters spoke like 5 different languages. Yes, still in the global economy, a competitive advantage is being able to speak another language. So in the US, though, our insistence on English only, you got your wish. But guess what that did? It made it a standard. Now how else are we competing? What else are we bringing to the table? And around the world, people have taken note. You create human capital with potential, with skills, and language capability. So I have seen in all my travels countries taking dead aim at US industries and siphoning off those jobs, leaving people in the United States with only geographic and proximity and their English language skills, and depending on their educational level, without a lot of hope. Where else can they go? So I can understand that. But now I want to talk about California's competitive advantage. And you know, I was born in South Dakota, raised in New Mexico, Las Cruces, New Mexico, then came to Northern California, lived there a long time during my technology career. But that took me to Austin and Dell, where I had a lot of success. But once I had sold a company, I just went to a demographic presentation. You know, I like numbers. I know a lot of people going to a demographic presentation isn't a lot of fun, but I thought that would be great. And at that presentation, Dr. Steve Murdoch talked about the changing demographics in Texas at the time. And remember, I had been a technology executive, just immersed in, you know, my life that way, and hadn't really taken note of the changes that were happening to the US. Well, as he was talking about the rapidly changing demographics, it just painted a picture of just complete collapse and negative. I mean, I left that thinking, my goodness, I need to slip my wrist. This just looks really bad. And then I stepped back and I said, you know, the people that he's saying are going to drag the economy down, there are a lot of people that look just like me. And so I thought, you know what, how do we reframe this? And the more I began to reframe it, I really did see the opportunity that we had in the United States. That if we just saw our rising generation with the opportunities that they have, with the assets that they do have, and we foster them, that becomes a competitive advantage. And so I began talking about this message and working with organizations to partner with that, and that's what got me to the White House. And that's what got me, when I got there, I knew the power of dual language. I knew the power, not just because it allows you to speak another language, and a lot of people think, oh, well, you can go travel different places. Yeah, that's part of it. But the other thing is that it provides you and your community an opportunity and a way to compete in today's competitive market. And so when I look at California and I think about the opportunity here in California, I think, my goodness, we have the entire world in one place. How many of you have at least 2 languages in your community spoken? Okay, how many of you have at least 5? More than 10? This is amazing. You all, we have the world in one place. But instead of seeing it as a liability, he sees it as an opportunity. And I know it can be tough to think about creating the future, because one thing is very clear: the future does not have a voting base, right? We knew that in early childhood better than anybody. They can't vote, right? So the future doesn't have that voting base. But one of the great things about California is its innovation, its possibility thinking. It's the place created Silicon Valley, created Hollywood, all of the great investments that were made here that allowed that great combustion to come together. We have another thing that can propel California forward, and that is our population that represents the world. We have the world in one place. Imagine embracing that in our dual language curriculums. Imagine embracing the parents to come in. Yes, keep your home language, but learn English as fluently, as fast as you can, and you will have advantages. Imagine the benefits of all that bilingual literacy in that child, and how that will help them learn not just English more fluently, maintain their home language, but help them do better in school with all the cognitive and analytical capabilities. And I know it sounds, when you see the trends, it's kind of tough, but I have to say, and when you see the kind of rhetoric happening and people saying it's only English only, build walls, but I have to tell you, those global trends that I saw back in the day, they continue to exist. Yes, there's going to be politics, but global business and the global economy will continue to grow, and it's going to grow with people connected, but also English speaking. So what are the advantages that we bring to our child population? And so I know it's challenging to think about the tasks ahead, but if we begin to think about the competitive assets we have with our child population, think about embracing the children, think about embracing their families, bring them in. What can we learn? How can we build? Because I will tell you, your businesses in your community, that's the type of human capital they want to create. And this is where it starts. That human capital is created by looking at that potential of every child, that optimism, that hope, giving them the hard skills, reading, writing, speaking, math, all those great hard skills, but then that other social capital perspective, giving them that talent, that skill, those language skills, the ability to be dual language and dual cultural, that allow them to thrive in the global economy today and in the future. And when you think about our future in California, what do we have? Yes, we have amazing agriculture. Yes, we have amazing still manufacturing, amazing industries. But what our best asset is our people. The ingenuity, the creativity, the innovation. And that starts with you. It starts in early childhood. That is America's competitive advantage. That is California's competitive advantage. And although it may seem counterintuitive at this time, but embracing dual language, making sure that our kids have that competitive asset is going to be one of the best skills that will guarantee lifetime employment for that child. And I know that seems really different and kind of at odds, but I'll tell you, the trends are there. The future is there. There may be rhetoric that is speaking to those folks who have been left behind, who have lost their advantages of geographic proximity and English speaking, because that's been taken away by other countries who have created that pipeline to take that away. But this is the future, and the future lies with us. And I know we can do it, because after all, this is not rocket science. So thank you very much. Now, I do want to have, if any of you have some questions, one of the things I'm most proudest of is that we did get to have dual language put into Health and Human Service and in the Department of Education for early childhood, and I'm really grateful for that. I do not know how that's going to go into the next administration, so download those toolkits and all that information while you can. But anyway, I remain optimistic. I think California has a massive competitive advantage, but I want to take any questions that anyone might have. No, there's somebody walking around with the mic. Another thing, being part of the Girl Scouts and understanding the importance of early childhood, I've also rapidly working in DC to sign an MOU with Head Start so that we can have Girl Scout troops in Head Start locations. So, and there is a little bit of the secret in the sauce. Almost every female astronaut that's in space was a Girl Scout. Almost half of America's elected female leaders were Girl Scouts. 80% of the U.S. senators, Girl Scouts. I was just at the Salesforce conference. 80% of the women that work at Salesforce, they were Girl Scouts. So there's Delane was a Girl Scout. Woohoo! So knowing those lifetime outcomes, you bet I want to make sure that our kids in Head Start get those kind of lifetime opportunities. Okay. So there's no questions? Pardon me? Yeah. Hey, Ben, there you are from Santa Barbara. Yeah, before my New York gig, Santa Barbara is my home.
I just wanted to thank you and the Girl Scouts for taking such a strong stand on LGBTQ issues and showing us how to lead in that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Trying to be a leader on that parental leave, right? Yay. And then on LGBTQ, that's right. We believe that a family, however the family presents their child, we accept how the family presents the child. That's not for us to get between a family and their child. Yeah, simple. Yes, over the, no? I'm going to give you some time back. Camille, any questions? Well, like I said, please go to the White House because on the there's Early Learning Educational Technology Toolkit, and there's also dual language toolkits. Yes.
So I'm sorry, this is a Girl Scout question, but I'm a Girl Scout mom and a former Girl Scout leader. First Five has done a lot of work on reducing sugar.
Yes.
Consumption for our children, and it really disappoints me that both of the Girl Scout major fundraisers around sugar. Cookies. So the cookies, I understand, they're traditional, they've been there forever, but when the fall sale got added, it's also about sugar. And if you could do something to change that, that would be great.
Actually, that's a really good question. Do you know Girl Scout cookie business is the second largest cookie business in America. It's $800 million, and it all stays local. It doesn't come up to the Girl Scouts of the USA. It all stays local, and it teaches girls really important skills of how to sell. I really credit a lot of my success in life to my troop leader telling me when we were going to sell cookies and we're going to do these things, and I said, my family didn't have means, and I said, I can't do these activities, and she said, well, yes, you can, because we're going to sell cookies. I was like, we're going to sell cookies? And she taught me this thing that I still use to this day. She said, you cannot walk away from a sale until you've heard 3 no's. And think about it. The first time you see a Girl Scout and you say no, you're like, eh. The second time you say no to that cute girl, you feel a little bad. But the third time, come on, So that taught me never walk away until you hear that 3rd no, and I use that in business to this day. I don't hear the first 2 or 3 or 4, 5 no's, I think Delane and Camille have a lot of that in common. But in terms of the sugar, I'd like to Girl Scouts is growing again, which I'm really grateful, and as we continue to grow, what I'd like to do is get rid of the fall sales and only go to the cookie sale, and that's really our thing. And we're also, here's the thing, Girl Scouts have really pushed palm oil, the Girl Scouts said get rid of palm oil for a variety of reasons. And one of our bakers is Kellogg, and because of Girl Scouts, Kellogg moved away for all of its products away from palm oil. So leadership takes a lot of different ways, but yeah. But that's why those kind of skills, that's why I really, and the importance of working with Head Start and getting kids the kind of early childhood learning, it's so important, both leadership and, as we all know, reading, writing, and getting the mom to spend time or the parents to spend time with their child. That's, that's what gives you those lifetime outcomes. Yes, Camille.
So in looking at dual language learners across the country, are there states that we should really... Utah, partly because of its Mormon focus, doing the missions, but I brought some of those statistics. A few years ago, Utah, I think in 2005, decided to really go whole hog on dual language because they saw the massive competitive advantage. And here's the other reason, is that their membership was declining.
So they couldn't rely on just a lot of people to fulfill. So they realized they needed to increase the language capability. But since it did that by putting dual language available from curriculums from early childhood all the way through high school, they have seen their trade go up over the last 5 years by over 40%. Okay, because now they have an educated workforce that is bilingual, that is multilingual. And so businesses are going to Utah because of that language skill that used to only just mostly be in the Mormon church, but now it's available to all their citizens. So clearly Utah is a really great model. And the other thing is even the attitude that we can portray, because a lot of students, especially kids who come from homes where English isn't spoken, by the time they get to middle school, they're kind of embarrassed of speaking the home language, so they stop. And they end up just speaking kind of what I call grandmother language, right? Just really simple. And then they get to high school, and other people are taking language. They're not taking those language courses, and so their language skills really tend to decline, and it doesn't allow them to get the kind of job opportunities because of their lack of bilingualism, where they should really have that. So helping families understand that please maintain your home language. Learn that, learn it fluently, and learn English as fluently as you can as well. Those two things would give you big advantages in the U.S. And there was a question. Yes?
Is it working? Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I'm sorry, I'm going to change the focus a little bit away from the dual language, which I really value, so I apologize for that.
No problem.
But because of your background in industry and business,
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask what you might be able to help us do, or how do you think we can approach businesses to work on more family-friendly policies, and perhaps you have some experience with the companies you were working with.
Yeah, that is a really big challenge in the U.S. It's really embarrassing to have our kind of low numbers, and also it really impedes a lot of parents, especially women who want to have an active career, but you also want to have children. That's a real tough thing. I haven't seen a lot of successes across the country. There are a few businesses that are starting to do that, I know, in Silicon Valley, but that is one where we have to really come together and promote. I'm going to share another statistic just because it just is amazing to me. Okay, who can tell me the country until recently that had a one-child-only policy? China, right? Okay, so bear with me with the numbers a little bit. But to have a replacement birth rate, which means as many children that are being born as are dying, is about 2.1 per thousand, okay? So China had because of its draconian one-child-only policy, had 1.7 birth rate to 1,000. That means that they were going to face a huge graying population that could not be supported by its youth population. And so they didn't want to have immigration because they already have 1 billion people. So that's why they got rid of that one-child-only policy. But they had their birth rate was 1.7 per 1,000. In the United States, we're one of the few industrialized countries in the world that has a replacement birth rate, 2.1 per 1,000. Europe, I don't think any European country has a replacement birth rate. That is why when you don't have a replacement birth rate, what happens? Get a lot of immigration because you need people to work in the different industries. But if you look at the U.S., and so we say, we have a replacement birth rate. Here's the thing. If you take away Latino birth rate and recent immigrant and Utah, the birth rate for Anglo women in the United States is 1.7. So think about that. We in the United States accomplished the same thing that a draconian communist state accomplished. We reduced birth rate to 1.7 per 1,000. So we do not have a replacement birth rate in that population. So what's going to happen is, unless we change family leave policies, so this is a little roundabout question, is unless we change family leave policies, we will have people from other countries come to the United States because meatpacking plants, poultry plants, all those plants will require that. They need that, and they will make it happen. Now, here's the other thing. Mexico and Latin America, they already have had their baby boom. That crested. They're not coming from there anymore. In fact, since 2011, more Americans have moved to Mexico than the other way around. So news flash, remember how I said there are countries that look at our pipeline and say, how can I get jobs from America? There are countries that are saying, how do I get remittances from America? And if you have a birth rate that is very high, you want to send people to the United States because they're going to send money back. So all those countries now are sub-Saharan Muslim nations. So I say to people, if you didn't like Juan and Maria, you're going to get Jasmine and Omar. That's just the way population numbers work. So unless you have a family-friendly policy where you have a replacement birth rate, we create a vacuum that takes people, and we take them where the populations are in excess. So it's at a movie coming to us, you know, and the more we can embrace family-friendly policies, the more people will have children in the U.S. But unless we embrace them, our population is declining. And in fact, in the Latina population, the birth rate is rapidly declining. It's almost at 2.1. And in a few years, it's supposed to be under 2.1. And if you think about your family and friends, there are very few moms, like Camille's mom, who had 13 kids, right? Or Delaine's mom that had 13, right? So family-friendly policies allow people to have children here. And if we have more than 2.1, the need for immigration is not nearly as high. It's not as sexy as saying build a wall, but that's just how it really works. All right, any other questions? Long-winded question, yes.
I want to thank you for your leadership and your inspiration. And I want to take back what you said really about the elite and the competitive world out there, and taking it back to the immigrant families that are coming to us with these multitude of languages. They are not in that elite. And I did take advantage a couple months ago, and when the toolkit came out, briefly took a look at it. Does it include, or do you have any recommendations on how we can engage the parents from these lower class, possibly less educated countries coming to us and engaging them and valuing their language and their culture so that their children can have that advantage?
Okay, she was not a plant. But thank you for that question, because one of the things that I did for moving from Austin to Santa Barbara is I took some time off, and everything that I learned from mobilizing communities, I put into a curriculum in a book. So if you go to Harcourt Mifflin Houghton, HMH, there is a family engagement program from pre-K to 12th grade for family engagement. It has videos, it has workshops for the families, it has professional development for the teachers. So that is an excellent resource. It's in English and Spanish, and it's written in accessible English, and it's very visually rich so that even folks that are challenged in English literacy can follow along as well. So that's HMH Family Engagement. So I didn't mean to put that out as she asked the question. But the other point is, how many of you know people who are training their kids to make sure that they speak Chinese or Mandarin? There's a few people. Those are people who want to make sure their kids have a global competitive advantage. That's why they're doing it. And typically America's elite, what you're going to find is you're going to find that they're educating their child. When I was in Austin, and we really showed, it was really interesting, we showed that bilingual kids in Austin Independent School District did better than their peers in English and math. And when I presented the study to the Board of Education, they refused to believe it. They said it strained the imagination. We had to do the study, and this was their researchers, we had to do it a second year. And guess what? We did it, and again, a cohort the size of 6,000 showed the exact same results. And so this time I made the superintendent do a luncheon for the whole city business leaders. And you know what happened after that? I got calls from all the elite public schools, PTA moms. Now, if you have never met an elite public school mom PTA, I said, why do you want to meet with me? I kept saying no. I learned you cannot say no. They made me meet with them. And their question was, whatever you're doing is giving poor kids an advantage over our kids. What is it? And I have to say, one of those elite public schools in Austin was founded on basically English only. But once they saw that it was a competitive advantage, I went to that school 2 years later, and it's got religious overtones. The morning services, todos estaban hablando español. Todos los niños rubios, pelo rubio, todos hablando español. What I just said, they were all speaking Spanish. All these blonde-haired kids, all speaking fluent Spanish, just in 2 years. Because what they saw was their kids were going to be left behind. And so now in every elite private school in Austin, they all have language skills. They all have language skills because they know they want their kids to compete against those elite from China, from India, from Brazil, from Mexico, from Pakistan, from Germany, England, and they know language is a competitive asset. So the elite know it, but we need to have it available to all of our kids. And that's what they did in Utah, and it's grown their international trade by 40%, but imagine what it could do in California. Yes.
I'd like to thank you for being a leader and promoting dual language learning for all children. And also, I was wondering if there's resources for parents who have English-speaking children, parent education information on how important it is for their children also to learn another language.
Yes, that's a great question. I would say that's one of a challenging issue with the Department of Education is there's still a lot of English-only mentality in the U.S. that people just say English only, darn it. And what they don't realize is that has become America's Trojan horse. All these countries have filled this Trojan horse. We've taken them because, oh, good, you speak English, but as they've been taking our jobs away. And so one of the things that I tried to get was the bilingual business advantages or bilingual advantages. And throughout the Department of Education, we couldn't. So what I settled for is Dr. Patricia Gandara and I wrote the bilingual economic advantages of bilingualism. So if you go to the UCLA Civil Rights site, Dr. Patricia Gandara and I wrote an entire paper on that. And I wanted it to be actual policy, but we didn't get that passed. Yes.
So my question is, given that you scrapped your speech after Tuesday, and in light of the fact that you've shattered a few ceilings yourself, my question for you is for those of us working with young children and their families, and potentially for parents of little girls in particular, do you have a message?
Oh, gosh. When I give this patch out, I give it to little girls and I tell them, this is not just a patch, it's a seed. It's a seed for your dreams and to never let your dreams go away. And, one of the things that, in terms of, like you said, shattering glass ceilings, there were a lot of times that I'm very grateful for my journey, having my Girl Scout leader telling me, don't take no, but also going camping for Girl Scouts because I learned you had to figure out, where you were going to the bathroom on camps and on trails. Now, that really mattered because my first job, there were no bathrooms for women. Now, most people would have said, how unwelcoming, right? I'm not working here, right? I could have been indignant. I could have said that. But I was like, when you don't have a bathroom, what do you do? And so I just went back and I thought about what I did, and I got a bike to work, and I made sure I knew where all the closest bathrooms were. And it took 6 weeks before they brought in my own porta potty that said hers on it. And I thought that was interesting that they just brought a porta potty because I think they were thinking, she's going away. So the thing is, you sometimes have to create your luck. So being prepared, even when it doesn't seem like there's that chance, knowing what you want to do and being prepared and seeking those opportunities. After that demographic presentation when I just wanted to slit my wrists, instead I started telling that story. And now think about how boring that could be, right? How do you tell the story about how the demographic shift is a competitive advantage? But the more I told the story, the better I got. It became a TED Talk, which then ended up opening up a lot of opportunities. So a lot of times what I always tell young people is, what is your dream? Don't lose hope. Don't change, think about that, be as good as you can be, and always be prepared. This opportunity to become the interim CEO of the Girl Scouts, I love the Girl Scouts, and I always stayed up on all my board notes and stuff, and so then the moment came, I was ready. When I was a young child, I loved basketball, and this is, who's pre-Title IX like me? There's a lot of us. Okay, that means before you, believe it or not, they didn't have sports at all for girls. It was not even, you weren't even allowed. If you wanted to try out for a sport, it was against the law. Okay, but I loved basketball. And so every Sunday night during basketball, I played, I did 100 layups in a row. Not in a row, 100 layups. And so some nights I didn't go in for many hours until I'd done 100 layups. Now people made fun of me in basketball. Why are you doing that? You can't even play on a team. But I did it because I loved it. I did it because, it brought me joy. Well, lo and behold, when I got into college, the Title IX law had passed, and there was a sign up for tryouts. And so I went to try out, and the coach gave me a sign, and something to sign, the little clipboard. And it was like your name, your address, how many games you played in, what kind of awards, how many points per game, all this. And I put my name and my address, and then I handed it back to her. And she looked at me, and I could see that she was about to dismiss me. And I looked at her in the eye, and I said, I never miss a layup. So she let me try out, and I made the team. So I can say I played varsity basketball in college. But the thing is, I didn't make the starting lineup, I'll be honest there. I was the bench warmer that you cheer when they finally get in the game. But my first game I got in, I stole the ball and I made a layup. And everyone went wild, and I know. And my coach said, Sylvia, you made it, made the layup. And I told her, Coach, I told you, I never miss a layup. But I kind of look at that as life. You got to show up prepared. And if don't give up. I didn't give up when I got, passed over in promotions. I didn't give up when they told me you can't head up, Latin America because it's too dangerous. So what did I do? On my own dime, I went and I flew to what was then the most dangerous country in the world, Chile, and I found out not so dangerous. But anyway, and I came back with that. And then when they told me I couldn't do global because, I wouldn't be accepted. So what did I do? On my own dime, flew to China, came back with glowing letters of recommendation, so they had to give me the job. So, you gotta, what I say is don't give up, be prepared. Luckily, a lot of times, it's a lot of extra homework. I don't stay up watching reality TV a lot, but, and especially I won't now going forward, but, But what I say to them, what are your dreams? What are your hopes? Hold on to them. I never dreamt I'd be able to be a basketball player, right? And I wasn't after my first year when I found out how hard it was. But I held on to that dream, and I got that. So never let go. So these are seeds, seeds of your dreams. Another question there. Oh, thank you. I know. One more question, Camille, and then she's coming up. Okay.
Hi, my name's...
Last question.
Hi, my name is Veronica. I'm from the University of Miami. And something that you mentioned was that your paper on economic advantage of bilingualism is on the civil rights page. And I think it's just something interesting to think about and consider because we see that the brain research is telling us that being in high quality programs is affecting children's brains, and being in low quality programs is detrimentally affecting children's brains. We're also understanding the brain developmental advantage of bilingualism. How can we shift from a focus of universal care and access as being something that's a luxury as to being a civil rights issue, being something that is a basic human right, and really focusing not just on access, universal access, but universal high quality care and education for young children?
I love your question, and I think it starts here with us. We have to say this is a non-negotiable. This is what we're going to accept. If you want coders, if you want that workforce of tomorrow, it starts today. And we have to start asking for it. We have to start demanding it. We have to start building the coalitions so that we can create that. We cannot allow other countries to continue to have a plan for our workers and our workforce more than what we have for our workers and our workforce. We can't let them outplan and outdevelop us. We need to be creating that, and I think it starts with all of us. You are as important to the economy of California as Silicon Valley is, as is Hollywood, and I would argue you're even more important, because the next Silicon Valley and the next Hollywood is going to be created, and it's going to be created from kids in your programs. So don't let anyone give you a backseat. You deserve the best programs. Our kids deserve that. They deserve that investment. So on that, Camille.